Hey everyone, welcome back to 6 Degrees of Associations. I'm your host, Lucas McCann. With me today, Randy Pennington. Randy is the owner of Pennington Performance Group and the author of Results Rule, a book right back here, if you're watching the video I'm pointing to, and who was talked about in my episode with our good friend Dubois here recently.
A guy named Randy Pennington. He wrote several versions of a book called Results Rule. And I used that, I read that book, and I used the pillars of the book, Results Rule, several times in my final interviews for the various jobs that I was blessed to secure.
Randy, I'm going to turn the mic over to you. Tell us a little bit more, about yourself. And as this is a show about associations, maybe how you're connected there as well.
Great. First off, thanks, Lucas, for having me. I'm honored that my old friend David Dubois would even mention me and the book. He's been very kind about mentioning that book over the years as being influential. The easiest thing for me to describe myself is I've been in this world a long time. All my gray hair is real. It's not painted in for effect. I'm not trying to look older. I've been at this a long, long time. I am at my core an organizational nerd. And I figured out a way, Lucas, for, 35 plus years now, to make my living helping organizations of all types figure out how they get ready and are equipped to succeed in a world that constantly changing. In fact, change just won't work and won't wait for them. So my association background, certainly I've worked with a lot of associations. Not as many as you, but I've worked with a lot, probably 100 or so associations around planning and leadership development and working with their boards and delivering programs and what have you. Some of them, like the International Right-of-Way Association, I worked with them to design their entire leadership platform and development activities with. But, I also as a volunteer leader, I've led volunteer boards. I've been on volunteer boards. I was honored to be the chair of the board for the American Heart Association for the state of Texas. I was a founding member of the Texas Council on Cardiovascular Disease and Stroke, appointed by the governor. I've worked on other industry associations, led a not-for-profit foundation in my career. So I kind of navigated both sides of that association world as both the resource to and a leader in those organizations.
Yeah. Randy, I had a good long talk sort of pre-episode and got to tell more about some of the association experience he's had. And I was telling him, after Dubois recommended the book, I went out, I bought it the next day. I couldn't put it down. It is a page turner for somebody like me who's a lifelong learner, seeking leadership principles. And I kept, turning the page going, yes. And I'm making notes on my whiteboard. And the parallels for leadership and association were obvious, right? There's a lot of change and adapt. And what, if nothing else, what are associations doing in today's environment, today's culture than changing and adapting? And one of the things you say, Randy, is change is happening at the slowest rate it ever will be. And to talk a little bit more about that, because it was just so profound and stuck out to me. And then you talked a little bit about, some of the ways that associations can maybe start to think about value through that lens of change fast and legislation and so forth.
Yeah, the first part is when you, thank you for that comment. And when you think about that concept, it is sort of scary, isn't it? It changes
Absolutely.
As slow as it will ever be again. Now, we could probably caveat that by saying barring a total meltdown, but let's assume that's not going to happen. But aside from that, it's going to keep up. Keeping up is going to be the minimum to survive now. Yeah. And so if you think about change, and this is something I didn't write about in the book, I probably would now. My work has expanded since then. But we really have 4 potential responses to change. And this, I think, is instructive for us, Lucas. One is, we talk a lot about that in the Results Rule book, is adapt, right? But when you think about it, adapt is basically level 1 change. It's what my wife kind of said to me the day we got married. She said, Randy, I'll never ask you to change. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. And then she went on to say, but I do expect you'll continually adapt. Uh, by the way, for a lot of us, that may be the highlight of the interview right there. You'll go home tonight and tell your spouse or partner, hey, you don't have to
that down. Yeah.
Write that one down. But, that really is level one. So level two is sort of thinking about anticipating change. And level three, beyond anticipating, it's pursuing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about adapt, anticipate, because anticipate gets you ready for what could come so that you'll be ready to adapt. Pursuing is getting you toward something that you might not even see yet, but it would be a difference maker for your association.
Right.
And then there's a fourth level of change, and I actually call it level zero. And people kind of look at me when I say this. The other option to change is ignore. When Steve Jobs wrote the biography about Steve Jobs, Jobs said of all the things that he was most proud of at Apple, some of the things he was most proud of were the things they decided not to do.
Right.
And so if I'm an association thinking about it, yes, I have to adapt to what's coming at me. I want to anticipate what is ahead. And then I want to pursue some things that strategically make a difference for us in the future. But the other thing is I want to ignore those things that, if it doesn't make our members go, wow, okay, maybe I look at ignoring that, assuming it's not regulatory, right? So we got to put that aside. If it doesn't lead us toward our vision, if it doesn't help us live our values, if it doesn't move the needle about member engagement, then why are we doing that? So it kind of goes to, you talked about you've got to get narrow. You and I talked about it before.
Right.
We have to get narrow. There are some changes probably that associations could do that they shouldn't do because they're not going to have the impact with the limit, especially with the limited resources.
Yeah. When you have these conversations with leaders, where often are they going astray in terms of prioritizing, right? So this feels like four very important balls to juggle, maybe not having all the same weight. And oh, by the way, there's things hitting you in the face daily, conversations, crisis, emails, what's the balance look like, and where are most leaders, in your opinion, falling short, or I should say just need some correction?
Great question. The first thing you ask is, where are the conversations lacking? Well, the fact that the conversations aren't happening often enough, that is the first piece that they're lacking. We're not having that time. And I get it, by the way. It's hard to develop time. So it becomes something that you have to become intentional about, just as you do answering your emails. It's a question I often ask leaders. How much time do you spend thinking about the future? Statistics tell us that the average leader spends about 25 minutes a day, 2.5 hours a week, thinking about the future. I would suggest that's the minimum, but it probably should be 2 or 3 times that. I mean, the target I want people to be thinking about is a minimum of 20% of your time as a leader thinking about where the business ought to be going. Whether you're talking about a business that makes widgets or the business of an association, it's still about, where it could be going. How do we anticipate? What should we be pursuing? Here's a good idea that maybe will work. It has for other organizations. Maybe it will be resonant here. Lucas, you're probably too young to remember a show called Wagon Train. Your dad would remember it. Wagon Train was a show that would never get made today because it was about a wagon train, literally going across the prairie. And the job of the wagon master, which is, when you think about it, that's the association leader, right? The wagon master, is to make sure the train goes from the 10 miles from today to where it needs to be at the end.
Right.
So that's the wagon master job. But there were a group of people that worked on the wagon train called the Scouts. And the job of the scout is to ride out over the horizon. Not on this side, because I can see the change that's coming at me on this side of the horizon if I just look up to look and to acknowledge it.
Right.
It's the changes over the horizon. And basically they wrote out every day trying to find out two things. One, where's the water? Where's the things that will sustain us going forward? And where are the hostiles? Where are the things that could hurt us going forward? So that we know what to avoid and we know where to steer to. And one of the things that we've started doing with a number of our clients is that we take scouting expeditions periodically. And, you know, you don't have to do it every day, but, you know, once a week, once a month, once a quarter, whatever timing feels right, is that we take some time and take a scouting expedition. And we ask people to be scanning over the horizon and thinking about those things that might not affect us today, but could affect us in the future. Not that we're going to anticipate or pursue them, but at least that we're anticipating so that we can see where things are headed.
That's excellent. As you're speaking, Randy, it does remind me a little bit about the book in terms of the importance of accountability, right? And so your scouts are feeding you information about what you're going to need to be accountable, and then there's also a group within the wagon train, if you will, that you have to be accountable to. But this idea that it's a team effort, you know, I'm a big fan of teams and powerful teams and what it takes, the culture of a good team. I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that accountability aspect of it, though. Well, I think it's so important.
You know, first off, you're exactly right. And the word that we use in the book is the courage of accountability. Right. And we all talk about accountability, but the courage of accountability takes it a little deeper, I think. And the idea behind that word is it takes courage to hold yourself and others responsible. Now, here's the way that you build that accountability is when we expand the level of ownership, accountability tends to take care of itself. So from a change standpoint, we know that people support what they help create. And we also know that, first off, no one ever argues with their own ideas, right? So so those are kind of
challenge them, I hope, but maybe not argue, right?
But not argue. So as I'm looking at the future, I'm always I want more participation. I want more ownership. And then it's easier to build that accountability. But leaders have to have the courage to do that. And one of the things that I see over and over again is it's not that individuals have an accountability problem, it's leaders have a courage problem. It takes some courage, if you're an association exec, to tell your board, we're headed off a cliff.
Sure.
That's a risky move.
Who wants to say that as the wagon master?
Right. And so it takes some courage. It takes some courage to hold someone accountable who's been with you for 15 years and has been the bedrock of your organization, but just isn't making the changes that they need to help move you forward. There's a courage that goes along with that. And once we transfer that from I'm holding people accountable to I'm building ownership so that accountability becomes mutual accountability, then it makes it easier to make those changes.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we talked about was how that looks in volunteer leadership. And one of the things you had mentioned, you gave a really nice tip of the hat to our friend David Dubois again, is that was one thing that he really excelled at, was empowering volunteers while still holding accountability, but empowering leaders to feel vested in their volunteer positions.
And you're right. David David was amazing at that. And so if you're an exec, I mean, put your exec hat on. When I put my exec hat on, it's like, wait a minute, I'm responsible for steering this. And at the same time, ultimately, I've got a volunteer board who could take this any direction that they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that accountability happens behind the scenes, and it happens through relationships. And if you go back to the principles in the results rule book, one of the principles is leverage the power of relationships and partnerships. And these things start to go together. Like when I spend the time, and this David did this exceptionally well, I spend the time building strong relationships with my volunteer leaders. Then when we get ready to have the accountability discussion, I have the relationships that allows me to be heard and respected in that. I mean, if you think about it for ourselves, if somebody that you don't have a relationship with tells you need to improve, okay, you'll do something minimally because maybe they're your boss.
Yeah.
But if someone you respect and you have a relationship comes to you and say, Lucas, we really need to talk about this. Chances are, and by the way, our research confirms this, if there's that strong, exceptional leader with a very solid and powerful relationship, people will be more accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a bond of trust that's a factor in there. The accountability goes way up, right? Essentially, and you respect it. It's almost like, as you said, it's somebody you don't know as much or you don't respect. It's very hard to be accountable to that person. In fact, you'll suppress that accountability to its lowest degree if there isn't some mutual respect in that.
So if you think about it this way, Lucas, I mean, think about the best leader you have ever encountered. You have that picture in your head?
I'm juggling. I'm, as you may imagine, I'm going, I thought this was the best leader in this area, and this area, and this area. That's a very good question and challenging question in of itself to say, here's the one pinnacle of leadership that I thought.
But
I have several, yes.
You have several. Okay, so let me ask you about that person. Did she or he expect less of you, or more of you?
Oh, absolute more.
And when that leader expected more, were you less likely or more likely to do everything in your power to meet or exceed those expectations?
Well, I would have clawed to the nth, to meet and exceed. Yeah.
And if that person said, Lucas, you need to make some changes, dude.
Oh, ears are open. Absolutely.
Now, was it because of their position or was it because of the relationship?
100% the relationship. And not, Randy, just to add to that, not just my relationship with that person, the relationships with others that I observed. And in some cases, more so that, because that is what built, maybe that's the foundation of my relationship with that person, was I watched the relationship that they built and flourished and grew. And that gave me a foundation of trust and respect for that person that ultimately allowed me to hold them in such high esteem.
So it's not that those leaders don't experience the same challenges as the rest of us with things like change and accountability. They just have a different platform from which to operate. And that platform of leadership makes all the difference.
100%. And as you said, not a title. It almost has nothing to do with it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I going back to the wagon and master analogy, I like
great analogy.
People that are going. It is a great analogy. It got me thinking as well. And you have this gang within the leadership, within the wagon that is sort of your members, right? You're leading your members. And we had talked about the difference between member-led and member-driven. And I thought that was an important distinction. And could you expand on that a little bit for us?
Sure. I mean, I think it's a great question because, in a member-led, a member-driven organization, you go, here's where the members are telling us, they're sort of driving it forward, right? Member-led organizations, I mean, if the members are leading everything, then we're focused only on those things that the members are at any given time. So if you think about a member of an association, pick an association, any of them. Do you think they're concerned more about 10 years from now, or are they concerned more about next week?
I mean, I hope both, but yes.
You hope both, but logically, they're going to be concerned more about this week. If you're a volunteer leader, hopefully we're concerned about the association in 10 years. But, I've seen a lot of them. I suspect you are too. Truth be told, they're concerned about their year.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And so if they're leading the organization, that's where we're going to focus. If we're driven by members of where the members are needing us to go, both now and in the future, then we can take an expanded view. So I think there's this question of member-led, and we talk about member-driven. Truthfully, I'm thinking off the top, there may be a better word than even member-driven. Mm-hmm. We need to go from member-led to member-obsessed.
Yeah.
Right? And so we're obsessed with creating that ecosystem that works for today and tomorrow.
Yeah. As we come up with titles for new books that there's another one, by the way, Randy, Member Obsessed. Let's add it to the list. I think we came up with 3 or 4 before we even started the show.
Yeah, there's a ton of places. The good news is there's no shortage of need out there, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to, you mentioned the research. I want to talk about some of your research. Could you share that with us a little bit? And I want to move that towards this concept of what makes you a memorable leader. But could you share with us a little bit more about the research that you've been working on? Sure.
Thank you. Back in the spring, Lucas, I'll set this up a little bit I was contacted by someone who said, I'd like to submit your name to be a coach for a COO of an international consumer brands company. Mm-hmm. And I said, cool, please do. And then this person said, by the way, I think of I've got to submit 3 names. You are the most qualified and you're the least likely to get it.
Okay. There's a nice tee up. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a nice tee up, right? So I said, all right, got my attention, tell me more. And this person said, look, you come in, and this is the approach that I've used for years. It's prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. Mm-hmm. Makes sense, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yet in the world of coaching, most of us look for, and even organizational change or new direction. We do it with all kinds with every new book comes out, mm-hmm. right? It's like, no, show me the prescription and then I'll make it fit my diagnosis.
Yeah.
That's how we do things in organizations a lot of times. It's the way, the scariest time for your staff, if you're an association exec or anyone else, scariest time for your staff is when you're away at a conference, especially if you come back with a new book. Because, new book means new program, right? It's just the way it works.
It's true.
And so I came up with this, what would we want a leader to be? And the term I kept coming back to is the whole package. That's really what we want.
Right.
So I sketched out my model and then I went, so what? Am I sure this is true? And we actually conducted research that was statistically valid at a 3% margin of error with a 95% reliability. Pretty much robust gold standard stuff.
Absolutely.
And we said, what makes a leader memorable? And what makes them just good, right? But the ultimate piece is what makes a leader, quote, the whole package. And here's what we found. Most of the things we teach as leaders make you good, but they don't make you memorable. Strategic planning, visioning, even change, emotional intelligence is now considered a basic, right? Maybe 10 years ago it wasn't, but now it is. Those are the things that we teach as leaders, and followers look at that and go, that makes you a good leader. Even personal presence. Yeah, you have to look the part, but nobody gets impressed long term by how we look.
Right.
If we look at what truly makes you memorable, it's those leaders who are good at all the basics and then excel at these three things. First off, principled character. They can trust you. And it's not just character trust, there's a congruence that's there that goes beyond just words to everything that you are is congruent. So that's principled character. The second is authentic presence. And the authentic presence means that you connect with people where they are, and there's no pretense about it. You are absolutely connected authentically, which is authentic. It's a difficult word because everybody thinks, well, that means I can just go in. If I'm feeling bad, I can go in and be a jerk that day. Well, no, that's not what we're saying. We want you're authentic as in hopefully the best day, right? But at the same time, if you're having a bad day, the authentic piece combined with the emotional intelligence piece says, right, I acknowledge it and I share it and I create the context for people. So there's an authentic presence. The third thing is people-centered performance. These leaders are no less concerned about delivering results than anyone else. They just refuse to leave a trail of dead bodies on the way to get there.
Yeah.
And so it's those three things that take you from very good to being memorable. And it's a shift in thinking. You know, most of us as leaders think about what we want to accomplish, which is okay, but that's base level thinking. Those memorable leaders go back to, what do I want followers to experience?
Yeah, as you're going through it, my mind is making the connection and the bridge is did we just come up with every association's top 3 initiatives and everything should focus and funnel through those lenses?
You know, it certainly could, certainly from the leadership part of the association. You know, and again, we ask people to tell us what impact do these leaders make. Mm-hmm. And they were mostly thinking about jobs, but I think it translates to associations as well. They told us accountability goes up, productivity goes up, connection goes up. In an employment standpoint, it comes down to retention. And people told us it's not just that we'll stay in our job. We don't even take the call from the LinkedIn recruiter. It's that level of connection and retention that's there. So again, when our leaders make those things of principled character, authentic presence, people-centered performance at the core of who they are with members, we get much stronger levels of engagement. And most important, probably, I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot of associations where there's this group of detractors out there that get traction by pointing to all the things that the leadership isn't.
Right.
Now, I'm not naive. There will still be that group of people. But there will be more people who will go, well, that's just stupid. Why are you saying that? I'm not going to suggest that those people aren't going to be detractors. I just think the audience for those groups will reduce. And it's that audience for those detractions that create a lot of the noise that take up our time day to day because, you know, somebody makes a post in your Facebook group and all of a sudden, you know, everybody's jumping on and the leadership is scrambling to try to figure out how do we respond, and now we're fighting, and we need to make that stuff noise go away. And if we can do those 3 things, then it makes it a lot easier to get those big things accomplished.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think sometimes easier said than done, and we all kind of wish there was a magic wand where you could sort of clean up some of that distraction at times. In a practical sense, it takes a calmness. You have to elevate yourself and the organization kind of above the noise and get refocused on the signal, if you were. But those are real practical sense issues that associations face, and they have to stand on that leg of value. And so that's another thing we talked about, Randy. What does value in an association, look like today? I mean,
it's changing every day.
Right.
So if I gave you the answer today, that could be different tomorrow. So for a lot of associations, it's education is their quote value today. Mm-hmm. It won't be their value going forward, because the biggest challenge to education value marker today is free. I can either look it up on YouTube, or I can do a query on ChatGPT, and all of a sudden I have all the answers. So the education arm, unless there's a certification involved. Now, if you can do a certification, now you've built a little moat there around education, right? But even then, getting people to attend education, we have to think about education differently. So there's the education value. There's a legislative value depending upon the industry you have. It's important that we make an impact. Again, getting people engaged around that is becoming more challenging. Mm. There is a connection value that we bring in associations. That's a very strong piece. But again, people are asking to connect differently. And that's part of the leadership focus, not connecting the way we want to connect, but connecting the way the member that we want chooses to connect. It's part of that member obsessed piece. So those are all values, and the principles remain the same. The activities change, because as soon as you figure it out, I promise you, your competitor, whether it's another association or a supplier to that association, is going to match it and move on.
Yeah, one of the things I love, and there's several examples in the book, and you talk about those who are just obsessed, and it said, quote, "It's caring so much that you work your tail off to deliver better results tomorrow than you did today." Right? That there's an aspect of that incorrigible work ethic that can change a lot, but that's caring at its core.
And it's caring, and I'd also offer, maybe it's also thinking about serving rather than providing a service. Mm-hmm. Providing a service is transactional. Serving is transformational.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. What else from looking back on the research, because I know there were thousands of people basically that were a part of that. What else kind of stood out to you? Maybe surprised you?
A couple of things stood out. One is we asked people to tell us what are the big issues leaders are going to face in the next 10 years. And the separation from the top two, and we gave them a list of like 20 different things, and rank it. And it's a 1 to 5 scale. 5 is significant, 4 is substantial. So I'm looking at the answers to substantial or significant as the most telling. And the top two were separated literally by tenths of a point. Number 2 was culture, which I think is very telling, that people are saying it's the culture that wins.
Right.
The second, the most important one though, number 1 by a few tenths, physical, mental, and emotional health of followers. So what that really tells us is, for those exceptional leaders, caring is now a core competency. And that's, by the way, that happened across age groups, from the 18 to 24 group to the 65 plus group. It was everyone said those two were important. What this tells us though, from a generational standpoint, it's not that this is a young generation being weak issue.
Mm-hmm.
which I realized, old folks like my generation, all those young people, they don't understand, right? No, it's not that happening. Everybody is concerned about it. What we've now reached, though, is a point, Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, said we've reached that point where it is in society that so much concern about mental, physical, and emotional health is there because so many of us are struggling with it, that it's now become a leadership issue.
Yeah.
And I think for associations, just like any leaders, we're consumed by keeping up with the busyness of the business.
Right.
That we're losing those things that connect. And I think it works that way with members. I think it works that way with our staff. We have to get past that busyness to start thinking about what's important and connecting. That's that authentic presence piece.
There's no mystery to the parallels between the increase in which the speed of change is happening, the increase of busyness, and the emotional, social well-being of individuals decline.
Right.
That seems obvious. And so, as you stated, that being the number one thing, because we've also reached a culture where there's an increase in the openness to discuss, those type of issues, right? As you roll the clock back 40 or 50 years, there was probably a relatively similar baseline of those things happening. There was just a decrease in the willingness to acknowledge it, talk about it. And now there's just been so much of it. I think there's been so much pressure in the can, it's exploded a little bit. And I'd say, look, we just can't handle this anymore. There's too much of it. We have to start talking about this.
When I was in grad school, this is like before burnout became a thing, right? I actually, my master's paper in grad school was on burnout, like years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we were seeing it in the healthcare environment where I worked. And so we created this way of thinking about how do we identify burnout. And the one thing, the research now is like way out of date that we did, but the one thing that stuck is what's the metaphor for thinking about burnout? And if you think about the old incandescent light bulbs,
mm-hmm.
at some point, when you put too much juice through those little filaments, the light bulb burns out.
Yeah.
And it happens because there's too much input going into those little bitty filaments.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you think about what we're experiencing today, I think that's a pretty good metaphor for what we're experiencing, is that we now have so much coming at us that the filaments are not able to withstand the sustained pressure.
Right.
And as leaders, if we can think about how do we either reduce the pressure, reduce the wattage, or
mm-hmm.
make the filament stronger.
Right.
Those are the two options.
Absolutely. And it feels like the strength at which the juice is coming, the change is happening at a faster rate than we can manufacture or innovate the filament.
Absolutely. Yeah, it absolutely is.
And so people want to just, I just need to turn the light off for a little bit longer these days so that it doesn't get so hot that it burns out.
It used to be when I started working in the world of change, people had one or two change initiatives a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just did your work. And then there were one or two big change initiatives a year. I noticed, 15 years ago, that had gone from 1 to 2 to 4 to 5. And now, I was just with a strategy session with a client 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about the change initiatives for the first quarter. I had to cap them at 4.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because they wanted to do more. And I said, folks, you can't take on more than 4. 3 would even be better. So that's how quickly these things are coming. And And so it makes it hard for all of us to keep up. By the way, if you're an association thinking about that, I mean, you feel this all the time when your board of directors gets together for their strategy session and we judge success by how many pieces of flip chart paper do we have on the wall. Oh, it was a successful meeting. We have all these changes, all these initiatives. There's nothing wrong with all those initiatives. Linus Pauling once said, it's much easier to tame a big idea than it is to grow a small one.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you can't do all of those. Pick 3. And then know those 3 have to be the absolute ones that move your needle.
Yeah. It goes back to, what did you say? Step 0. What do you say no to?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, if it doesn't help us engage our members, if it doesn't help us achieve our vision, if it doesn't help us live our values, if it doesn't help us, create the sustainability either financially or legislatively for our members, there's only 3 or 4 big things that we have to be able to think about. Everything else should fall into those.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a great couple of lenses to focus everything through, and absolutely. Randy, I want to ask you a couple of maybe slightly more fun ones before I wrap this up and ask you if you have a recommendation for the show. But the first would be, and I asked you this pre-show, and I say not to rewrite, but what would you update in terms of results rule? Is there a chapter or a section that you look back and the book's been out for a little bit now, you say, hey, this part I could update this. I got some new thoughts, and I'm sure you have hundreds, but this is something I would update.
I appreciate the question, and it's one I've thought about. You and I talked about it pre-show. Maybe we rewrite it and put a little still at the top.
Oh, yeah. Results still rule.
Results still rule, because they do.
Absolutely.
The principles, I would say, exactly are the same. I would change a few of the examples to update them. That's just sort of the natural piece. But mostly, I would expand. For example, I would expand the part on change to understanding that you can't ignore change. Adapting is not the only piece of it. I think that's important. I would expand the piece a little bit on accountability to say it's the responsibility of ownership mitigates the need for accountability. I would probably update that a little bit. The other thing that I would probably do is everything in books like this, and they're designed this way, but we all do it, is it makes it sound like, well, this is easy. This is not easy. If this were easy, I would have had to have a real job for all of these years. And there would never have been another book written after In Search of Excellence. Truthfully, that would have been the last one if this was easy.
Right.
It's not easy. And I think I'd go back and acknowledge some of that a little more and provide a little more about what it takes to slog through the messiness of change, because the middle of change is always the messy part.
Yeah. Well, I as I said before, I hope you do it, and I'll be the first one on the book buyer if you write something, results still change, or put something else out. So keep me posted.
I will.
Next question is kind of an old faithful on the show is, what's something, Randy, on your calendar, as we're not to date the episode, but we're reaching the end of a calendar year here, what's something that you might already have on your calendar for next year and is just not penciled in, it's penned in?
Yeah, what's penned in is, we're completing a series of white papers on our research. If you go to my website at penningtongroup.com, and I know you'll put that in the show notes, you'll see a part that talks about the whole package, and you can go in and download the first of what will be 4 white papers. So it's penned in. Their spots are already on the website for those, so those white papers have to be done. I'm working on the second one right now. That's pinned in that I have to do. The other part is I am becoming more and more certain that our culture is not ready to keep up with where we're headed. And so I'm doubling down in the future on helping leaders and leader teams be equipped to succeed in a world where change just isn't going to wait for them.
Mm-hmm.
We can't assume this isn't going to happen. I mean, if you're going to retire next month, okay, you can probably write that off. But for the rest of us,
Right.
no, we have to pay attention to this. It's critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, lastly, Randy, what about something that we couldn't find on your resume, we couldn't find online, or what I've been saying maybe more recently is something that ChatGPT doesn't know about Randy?
Probably one of the things that ChatGPT doesn't know is my work ethic began very early in my life. When I was 12 years old, the very first day of the summer vacation, I walked into breakfast. My dad said, "Well, you're 12 years old. What are you going to do this summer?" I said, "Well, I'm taking swimming lessons, playing Little League baseball." And he goes, "No, where are you going to work?" And I was like, "No, you don't understand. I've got swimming lessons. I've got Little League baseball." And he said, "I understand. I'm your coach. I know you have the games.
Right.
But you're not playing the games if you don't have a job that working at least 20 hours a week, doing something. You can mow yards. You can do whatever you want." I ended up being the locker room attendant at the public swimming pool when I was age 12. So that's probably one thing that has fueled my work ethic ever since. Most people also wouldn't know is I did spend a summer of my youth. I played in a band at Six Flags Over Texas.
Okay.
So I spent a year doing 8 shows a day at Six Flags Over Texas. So
What was your role in the band?
I was a guitar player and a vocalist for that group.
All right. But did you keep it up at all? Do you still strum?
I still own 3 guitars. I don't play much anymore. And when I do, it's only for myself. I have lost so much of my chops that I would be embarrassed to go back out and try to do it in public anymore. So
I don't hide that I'm a big music fan. My tickets are always booked for Jazz Fest here. My poster on the wall, that's something that gets penned in my calendar. So I have an appreciation for those arts.
yeah, so I mean, those are maybe 2 little things that most people wouldn't know about me. So
Well, thanks for sharing.
yeah.
And as I wrap us up, I'd love to hear if you have somebody in your network you think our audience would benefit from hearing from.
There's a guy named Scott McCann, and Scott and I have been friends for a number of years. Some of us in the association world will remember when the guys from Harvard wrote about the experience economy, and that set the association world ablaze. What most people don't know is that before they ever came out with their research, Scott had written a book called All Business is Show Business. He is a preeminent expert in experience and how organizations, associations, and companies can use experience to create distinction. And so I would recommend Scott's books, but he would be a great guest.
Well, that sounds perfect. I mean, experience is a big part of the association marketplace historically and today, and how that continues to change and evolve, we will see. Thank you so much for the time, Randy, and for the book.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.